But don't you think there should be a healthy balance between logic and empathy, and emotional reasoning and logical reasoning?
What if it's logical for me not to be empathetic? Which one should win?
I mean, as someone, I am not.
Yeah, but hang on, let me ask you the question again. What if the most logical thing I can do in a situation is not be empathetic?
Then I
But
think
if I were empathetic, it would make the person feel better. Which thing should I do?
I think, from my personal perspective, logical thing is always better. But I know that some people value emotions more. But
Yeah, I know, but what you just did was you just gave me a value judgment. And your value judgment is we should value logic over empathy. So if that is the case, if a man does exactly that, I don't see why he'd be punished for it, or how that would be a bad balance, because we're valuing that now higher than empathy, right?
yes, but I feel like the men that you're mentioning a lot of the times are the men who doesn't have any empathy or lack complete any emotional capacity to understand the
Those
other person.
men, people completely lack those traits, are extraordinarily rare. I mean, extraordinarily rare. Yes, I'm sure that we've all encountered them. I think most of us who have encountered them probably didn't even know that we encountered them, but they're very rare. And I think that the reason so many people misdiagnose this who aren't even in the field of psychology is because they see things as being a lack of empathy, or see things as being a lack of emotion, because they would behave differently, or they're used to people behaving differently. But that doesn't mean that the person actually lacks empathy, right?
No, of course not. I just think that both genders or people, because it doesn't always apply to gender. I'm more of a logical person, whereas my friend sometimes is more empathetic. I think we both need to work on each other and learn from each other how to improve both sides. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
but I'm going to kind of reject the balance thing, right? I don't think that you need to be balanced. I think that there's kind of a hierarchical order of how things should be done. And do I think that you should defer to kind of reason and logic before emotion? I do. And I don't think that that needs to be balanced. Why does that need to be balanced exactly? That to me seems foolish.
That doesn't mean it has to be 50% balance. That just means try to understand the other person too. If
Yeah, but that's logical, right? You're literally asking for logic here. If you say would you try to understand the other person's perspective, I mean that's exactly what we're doing the second we're arguing, or the second
Right.
we're crafting arguments, or the second we're doing any of that. We're literally trying to understand the other person's perspective. The entire course of discourse is to do this, right?
Something happened? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I do see what you mean. And like I said, I'm someone who values logic more. However, if you're trying to be logical about a situation, sometimes you're becoming too robotic. And I think it's healthy to include emotions in whatever decision
Well,
you
who
make.
gets to determine these standards? Like, who gets to determine the standard of what's too robotic and what's empathetic enough, other than how I feel? So, I mean, again, it's always just a deference to, but I feel this way. And it's like, well, if the other person doesn't feel that way and they're not doing anything wrong exactly, then you're just really kind of putting it down to preferences, right?
Correct. Yeah, it varies from a person to person, but
Yeah.
I do think that there's some people from both sides who are too close-minded to see the other way. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but I think closed-mindedness is good too. Like, for instance, I would be very closed-minded to an open relationship, right? I would be very closed-minded to, I mean, just any number of different things I would be extremely closed-minded to. And I don't really see a problem with that either. I mean, I don't see why that's problematic.
I mean, there are specific things that we're all close-minded about, but
Yeah, sure.
but what I mean
I agree.
being open-minded about that. Okay, this person functions differently. This person thinks with their emotions first and then thinks through the actions. Whereas, like me, for example,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
about
sure, but here's the difference, right? Here's the difference. You and I value that differently, and that's where this kind of empathy thing comes up, right? Is because I don't value everybody else's decisions equally. I think a lot of people make stupid decisions that I don't value. I think that they have bullshit lifestyles that I don't value, and so I just say, okay, this is valueless to me. I don't care about it. I don't even want to understand it, right? It's completely valueless, and I don't see a problem with that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's why you wouldn't work with every single person, whether that would be as a friend or a relationship. It all
Sure.
varies from a person to person. And definitely, I mean, I'm sure we all have opinions about, oh yeah, this person is doing something weird and I don't want to interact with that. But I'm saying if we're talking about relationships and you're already pursuing this person, and if you guys are already close, you should make like amends to try to work on each other together and understand each other better. Because I think the healthy relationship, it always should be a balance of emotions and logic.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but then the thing is I think that all relationships are going to have dominance involved. One person's always going to be dominant over the other person, no matter what
For
type
sure.
of relationship you ever engage in.
sure.
I think any two consciousnesses which come together, one is going to dominate the other one, no matter what.
Right.
And so the thing is like, when you say to find this balance, right, I say that you should find the deference. Who's going to be deferred to and who's not going to be deferred to when it comes to the larger decisions. And that's where the Christian ethic comes in of submission from my worldview.
So if there's dominance in a connection, there must be the opposing quality or energy, which is giving that balance. And this kind of
Why must there?
Sorry?
Why must there?
In order for someone to be more dominant in a connection, there must be someone more submissive.
Why must there?
What must there?
Yeah, I don't understand the premise here. So in order for someone to be more dominant, one person has to be more submissive. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right, go ahead.
So this kind of reminds me of the golden mean. This is a philosophical, I can't never pronounce that, maybe by Aristotle, but it's all about there can never be too much excess or deficiency. So I do believe everything must be balanced in order to work. And in this case, if we're talking about emotion and logic, in order to be an impartial person, you do have to understand all sides, and not just through logic, but with your emotions as well, in order to get to a sound decision.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I still don't really understand where you're going with it. Like, even if I were to assume that you needed to have emotions and logic, I think I would agree with that. But I'm not really sure what the point here is when we're talking about two consciousnesses, which one would always need to defer to the other. Like, that's always going to be the case, right?
It's just, I think that what...
Well, I'm just trying to figure out the position. That's all. I'm not beating you up. I just want to figure out the position. Like, what is it you're actually trying to say here?
Well, just because you did mention that you don't find it important to have balance, I was just providing an example of why I do believe balance is important in all areas of your life.
Well, balance to me would assume, like if I was trying to balance this pin, that it was equal on all sides, or otherwise it would fall over. But as was just demonstrated by the gal next to you, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name because you came in a little late, but she said, well, when we're talking about balance, what if you had the pin still balanced, but it was like this, right? What if it was over on its side like this? It's still balanced, right? It's just all moving one direction. But when you say balance, I'm not sure that I'm looking for equality between logic and emotion. We just want balance here, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, if that's the case, then I wouldn't disagree with that. I'm just saying that I think that the deference to logic and reason is usually going to be superior than the deference to emotion. And that men are, generally speaking, more reasonable and more logical. And so, generally speaking, I think that women should probably defer to men. That's my basic syllogism.
I'd say to each their own on that stance. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say.
Wait, what does that mean, though? To each their own?
To each their own. If you do feel that way, then in your own stance and in your own way of logically thinking, then so be it. If we're gonna talk about this in the sense of like relationships and stuff like that, someone who probably feels the same way as you is going to compliment that, in that way will create that ultimate balance in your way, right?
Well, I mean, there are people that want to be furries, and they will find someone who wants to do that with them. But do you object to his, I think Andrew's getting to kind of, at least to some degree, this concept of women being submissive to men. Do you object to this in a relationship dynamic context?
I would say, like, it definitely is a trope that is quite common.
What do you mean a trope?
Like, it's a relationship type that men are more dominant than women. It's very common. I understand that. But there's also, like, relationship types that I feel like the woman wears the pants, to some extent. There are some stay-at-home dads, for instance, and the mom would be the provider.
Well, we can go ahead and grant that there's all kinds of relationship dynamics. There are women who are more dominant. There are women who want to date soy boys and them. I'm not really interested in that, though. What I am interested in is kind of more painting with a bit more of a broad brush and seeing what works best, generally speaking, when it comes to relationships. What do men generally want? What do women generally want? Because we can make all these carve-outs about, well, I have a friend who knows a brother who knows a guy, and she pegs him. Okay, cool. But I think what Andrew's talking about is he's taking a position. He's not just saying, well, whatever floats your boat. He's saying, I think, Andrew, you can correct me, the best relationships, they work out best if the woman is submissive to the man. Is that correct, Andrew?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
I'm saying that would be generally what I would consider to be optimal. I think that the deference to the man is generally going to make most relationships more optimal. Yes.
I mean, I agree
and kind
with
of yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I agree that it's generally true, but like she mentioned, there still are exceptions. Like, I would consider myself, like, I want to be a provider, for example.
Stop the cap.
You want to be a provider?
I do, yeah.
For a man?
Yes.
Who should...
Can you provide for dinner for the whatever podcast tonight?
That would be a good way to make up for the tardiness.
Yeah. Then you can be a provider.
I mean, I want to be a provider for my guy.
Oh, okay. Well,